From the Blue Form Media Studios, this is the 435 Podcast, the pulse of Southern Utah.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another live episode of the 435 Podcast. I'm your host, Robert McFarland, joined with Jeff Watkins here in the studio, the Blue Form Studio here in St. George. It's a beautiful Friday, November 21st. How's it going, man?
Couldn't be better.
Yeah? Couldn't be better. That's always your standard response. But could you actually be better?
Well, I always say I could win the lottery, but other than that, I couldn't be better.
Money solves all problems?
I don't know. Joe Rogan was talking about that on his newest episode. They were talking about the lottery and, what people would do. And most people end up broke and, most people are still miserable. So,
yeah.
But, $200 million could solve a lot of issues.
It could solve a lot of issues.
The problem, though, is you got to play the lottery to win the lottery, and I don't play the lottery.
Yeah, mo money, mo problems,
Yeah,
says
no problems.
P. Diddy with all of his problems.
Yeah.
With all his problems. Well, we got a pretty good show lined up for you today. There's been some news. There's been a lot of national news, but there wasn't a whole lot of Utah news that I feel like was super relevant to our story today. But we're going to cover a couple of those things that are happening here locally, a couple of events. We're getting into the holiday season. We're still working on this live format, but I got a lot of feedback, a lot of comments. And if you agree, please jump into the comments. Let us know if you like this format where we cover national, state, and local news elements. And we're going to start factoring in some interviews along the way. But we wanted to flush out and make sure that we have the right tempo, the right format set up for doing a little bit of the news. And then we bring in guests to talk more in depth on some of these items. But I had the opportunity yesterday to speak to Leadership Dixie, organization that's been going, I think, since the early 2000s. It basically it's a program designed to collectively bring in leaders within the community and also to build leaders from people that are moving here from outside to understand the community deeper, to make business relationships, but also to educate leaders within the community to be more active community members. So I was invited over there to Black Desert. They had their growth day. And what were our top story today and our top focus of today is we're going to talk about what I covered at that Leadership Dixie event, understanding growth. The crazy thing is it took me a week to put all the stuff together. Jeff was laughing at me because I had like 10 pages of notes on growth, and I was trying to boil it down to a 30-minute segment. But what we want to do is I want to present what I've kind of collectively put together, what the different pillars are, and then these paradoxes that come out of this. And it's to help give some understanding as to where all the friction is when it comes to growth and understanding how these elements interact. So we're gonna finish the episode with that. But to start, we're gonna jump into rapid fire. We're gonna cover Tech Ridge, got some big things going on up at the Black Hill. The age of disclosure, if you haven't heard about that, we're in the age of disclosure with aliens and unidentified flying objects, the UFOs of the 70s or the UAPs of the 2000s. Some interesting stuff to come out this week over that. Stuff the Bus event, December 5th at Fire Station 1. We're going to be a part of. We want to invite everybody out. We're going to cover some holiday events happening in Southern Utah. But let's get into the first piece of this. Tech Ridge developers begin the healing of the Black Ridge Scar, or the Black Hill. I put Black Ridge, but it's actually the Black Hill. There's two Black Hills. Fort Master used to be a Black Hill, and then now it's houses. And the other ridge, where the D on the hill is the Black Hill. So if anybody's ever looked up at the D at the hill, there's a big cut into the hillside with what looks like an eyebrow, as described by former Mayor Dan MacArthur, which is very apt. When he said that in one of the meetings one time, I'm like, it does kind of look like an eyebrow. It's like one of those little lifted eyebrow things. We have some history on it. Jeff, what's the history? Now, this is all alleged as the history. I wasn't here when it happened. Jeff wasn't here when it happened. Yeah. But I have seen some descriptions of it. We've heard some people describe the history of it. But remind at least the listeners, if they don't know, what happened with that? Why is it all cut up like that?
Yeah, so I think it happened in the early 90s, mid-90s. So it happened a while ago, and essentially what it is if you're, like if you're standing, maybe somewhere on the boulevard and you look at the D, there's some condos and stuff that have been developed up there, which other people are frustrated about too. But if you go off to the left, maybe south, there's a whole other like little road that was cut in, and it looks like an eyebrow scar. People call it the scar on the Black Hill. And I've heard a few different things, just from people kind of talking around town,
the whispers,
that a contractor did it out of a land dispute, maybe out of spite. I've also heard that a contractor was legitimately cutting a road in there to planning on building some condos, and the citizens didn't really know about it and got all up in arms and kind of forced the contractor to stop, and he just left it. So either way, it was cut into the Black Hill. It's a little bit of a bummer. I don't know.
The whole hill is basically privately owned. So the airport area where Tech Ridge is currently being developed, go to techridge.com. You can find out all about that.
They posted it on Facebook. And
there's 112 acre development that's going up there, and they're going to have Tech Ridge in general. It's going to have I think over 40 acres of parks and trails, maybe 60 acres. I got to fact check myself on that one, but it's going to have a ton of parks and trails. The whole ridge edge is going to be a 5K trail. It's almost a perfect 5K. So they're going to hold races up there. There's going to be multiple parks. It is going to be higher density stuff. They just approved a 500 unit apartment complex that's going to be going up there.
Doesn't that mean more crime?
It doesn't mean more crime.
It does not.
But the interesting thing, though, going into what our issues are with growth, there was some backlash with that. But if you look at statewide surveys and even local surveys, density isn't necessarily what people are upset about. There's a small segment of the population that say we don't want density, but for the most part, I don't think people are opposed to the density increasing.
It's the other stuff that might come with it, right?
And it always lands in, I just don't want it in my backyard. Yeah. So you have a small group of neighbors that are adjacent to that development that will say this will ruin my quality of life, which is a very broad it's a broad feature list of what it means to be quality of life. So the point being is that this is all private land. So all of Tech Ridge outside of the airport, that hill, the hill above the D, the flat space that's above the D, that's all privately owned, as well as the hillside itself. So they put hillside ordinances in after the D, after the scar was cut into it, in order to preserve the plateaus and the scenic vistas, I think is how it's described. Mm-hmm. So in order to protect the scenic vistas, they put hillside ordinances in, and they have different elevation gains as a percentage that allows, like, you can't build over a 30% slope. So if it's a 30% slope, you can't build on that area. And then additionally, you can't build up to so many feet before the edge of a ridge. So like Four-Master was kind of grandfathered into this because there's a few lots that are still there, but you can't do that on any undeveloped ridges as of now. You have to be so many feet back from the ridge line to be able to build on moving forward. So that's where with Tech Ridge, they have to fall within that hillside ordinance. And so even this 500 unit apartment complex, it's going to be set kind of in the center of the ridge. And as much as it's going to add a skyline to St. George, which I think for some people they're not going to like, but I think for other people it's going to add some character to the city as it continues to grow. Mm-hmm. But the point of Tech Ridge, just in a macro scale, is they want it to be a live, work, self-sustaining area. There's going to be people that are going to be traveling up on the ridge, but the idea would be whoever lives up on the ridge is going to can stay up on the ridge. There's going to be grocery stores, there can be restaurants, there's going to be office buildings. I think they have 6 office buildings actually in process that'll be coming out of the ground and probably almost finished by the end of 2026. They're moving on that right now. So there's going to be roughly, the estimate is between 75 to 10,000 people living and working up on the ridge at any given time in the future. Now, to think about this, there's an element of it protects the feel of downtown, the current downtown, and it gives kind of a economic district to St. George that's all fresh and new and allows the preservation of the historical pieces of downtown to still exist. So I think it's a really good balance between the two. However, Tech Ridge Developers, Isaac Barlow is being the general manager, along with Dave Nilsson. I think they've taken this idea of the aesthetic of St. George really seriously. And from the beginning, and I've talked to Isaac a bunch about this, and he's been on the podcast before, the aesthetic of the area is very important to him because he knows it's important to the rest of the community. And that scar is a detractor from what he's ultimately wanting to be seen up there, and not in a very good financial move. This is my own analysis of this. He'd probably disagree, but he purchased that property specifically so that he could fix the scar. So the area in which it looks like there was once going to be condos, I wish I had a picture to pull it up, that's kind of the deeper scar that's in it, that's on the lower portion. That's going to take a few years, probably 5 years, to fully develop and fix to make it look and blend into the hillside. But the eyebrow, which was going to be a road that led up to the top of the ridge, that is currently being worked on right now. So they just on their social media announced that they're moving forward with that. There was excavators up there yesterday in the rain working on it. It's great. It's a good time in the rain to go work on dirt.
No dust.
Not as much dust, and you don't have to have as much water to be dumping on it as you're going through it. So that's exciting news, I think, for pretty much anybody who's here that thinks that scar is awful looking, like myself. Big shout out to Isaac Barlow at Tech Ridge for taking on that project. I think it's going to be a big improvement.
Yeah, it's an out-of-pocket expense, you know?
It really is. There's no return on that. It's just an aesthetic feel. But I think that goes to show having a local developer develop Tech Ridge. I think there's a lot of value in that because I don't think that a bigger outside developer group would have gone to that effort in order to really make the area nice. So big shout out to Isaac on that.
For sure. 60 acres, by the way. Parks and trails.
60, not 40. 60 acres of parks and trails. Thanks for fact checking me on that. I knew it was a big number. Yeah. Out of the 100 plus acres of development up there, half of it is parks and trails, which is great. I think that's it's a good move on his part.
Just one last thought too, maybe on the Skyline portion. If you're downtown, if you're eating lunch at Bonnaroo Bakery, or you're over by the courthouse or on Main Street, you're not going to be able to see a whole lot of it on Tech Ridge. You'll be able to see it, kind of farther away. But I think it does add that element of organic growth that I think is good. And they've done a bunch of traffic studies and stuff like that.
Yeah, because there's going to be three roads. They're just finishing this southernmost road going up onto the ridge. So there'll be 3 access roads. And from the traffic study that they did back in 2019, I believe, from that traffic study, about 70% of the traffic is going to be directed to the further south. So the I-15 Bluff, you're going to get off on I-15 at Bluff, and then you'll head up on the ridge on that road right there. So 70% of the traffic is going to go through a commercial area. It's not going to come up from the boulevard. The first and only way to get up there before was you got to go to the end of the boulevard and go up the hill. They have another road on the backside that's around Black Ridge Cove that is that's accessed off of Indian Hills, which is a residential road. So you have two access roads right now, but that third access road that they're finishing up right now, you can see asphalt's already been paved. They're almost finished with it. That's going to be 70% of the traffic of getting access up onto the ridge is going to go through there. And I believe in a couple of letters of understanding, they might even redirect the road that terminates at St. George Boulevard. They might even redirect that road. I don't know if that's fully in the approval requirement, but they might even redirect that road so that it kind of takes some pressure off of the boulevard as being a thoroughfare, which could be good too. I mean, any improvements we can do to traffic and managing the traffic, but going back to just this not in my backyard thing, that development will significantly improve the home values of all of the homes that are on Donley Drive and up there. In my opinion, this is just in my opinion, because you're going to have people that are going to live, work up there on the ridge with high-paying, high-wage jobs. The average salary of the employees that are going to be on Tech Ridge, mainly tech employees. Zonos is almost doubling their campus, by the way, which I don't know if it's announced yet. Sorry, Clint, if I'm breaking news here. But Zonos is blowing up with the tariffs and what they do. If you don't know what Zonos does, go back and listen to our podcast with Clint Reed. It's an amazing business. It is a massive business that holds one of the key technological requirements for online businesses to do business across international borders. Zonos is like the keystone in that whole industry, massive. And I think Blue Four Media, they manage a podcast for them, but this is a massive business, and that campus is just going to continue to grow there. So high-paying jobs up on the ridge. It's going to bring income into the city that isn't going to be forced to keep growth, right? They're going to be able to just pay people that live here currently more, and it's going to increase the values across the ridge. But we won't belabor this tech ridge conversation anymore because we can dive deeper into it later. But moving on, age of disclosure. If you haven't heard about this, I think it's something that put on people's radar. You know, I think of our listeners as we cover a lot of politics, and so if you're a regular listener to the show, I think you're very interested in the politics, and maybe you have heard about this this documentary that was originally released back in March in the South by Southwest Film Festival. But they are today, on the 21st of November, they're releasing it into theaters, but it's also available for rent on Prime. It's a documentary about UFOs. Yes, everybody, UFOs, UAPs. It goes into this 80-year history of what's been going on with stuff that we can't describe. So it's not just another History Channel special, from what I understand. It's directed by Dan Farah, who also produced Ready Player One. So and was Steven Spielberg. So the interesting piece to this, before I get into it, is that you have this fantasy Hollywood director highlighting this documentary, which is supposed to be fact. It gives me the feel, and let me know if you think this is true, Jeff. Gives me the feel of a little bit of the Kubrick moon landing thing, where you have this like Hollywood director, producer, focusing in on this conspiracy theory, which has been dubbed over the last 80 years. I'm not sure how to take this, but I do want to watch it because there's a lot of high political officials that are featured in the movie, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, multiple senators, multiple House of Representatives. They're featured in the video talking about what is occurring and what's not being disclosed. So it's really interesting. It was screened on November 18th to Congress specifically, where they had a House bipartisan group, Democrats and Republicans, Anna Paulina Luna, which I know there's a lot of political tension with her, but she's been really driving this full disclosure on UAPs and what's going on and all these drones and these Tic Tacs and all these things. She's been driving it, but the bipartisan group, I think it was about 24 different congressional members that screened this back on the 18th of this month. But it really covers 80 years of recovered non-human craft and biologics. So it's saying that we've been recovering non-human craft and biologics for the last 80 years. It's a multi-decade crash retrieval and reverse engineering program under a black budget, so a non-disclosed budget, with no congressional oversight is what they're focusing on. They describe active competition with China and Russia over the UAP technology, and these UAPs that are flying over restricted airspace, nuclear military sites. This is happening in Russia, the United States, and in China, where these UAPs are having unrestricted access over nuclear and restricted airspace. And these alarm bells are sounding off like, hey, we got to figure out what this is, if it is non-human biologics, or if it is something that we know about but is not in the governmental control. There's a lot of, I think there's a lot of security questions that people have, right? And there's a lot of things that are distracting. This is the piece going back to the Kubrick in the movie. We don't know what to believe anymore. Right? It's like we're constantly fed this information in order to distract us from one thing to another thing, whether it's Epstein or UAPs or, a virus from a bat, all these different things. I feel like we're just getting pulled and pushed into these different distracted windows. But I think this is an interesting era of what is going on. I'm hopeful that we can get some truth out of this, but I'm also skeptical that what truth ends up actually being is just more More lies.
Yeah.
They're lying to us, Jeff.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of to me it goes back to like Oliver Stone and his research and movies about JFK, you know, like and then Trump promises to release all of the JFK files, and then he releases files and 99.9% of them are all just redacted. Right?
Yeah.
We don't know anything more, but you know, it feels like something's weird about it. Some of the evidence doesn't add up. I don't know. Is it going to be? I haven't seen the movie yet. I've obviously read some about it, and I don't know. It's what percentage of it is true? Can you spin certain things to make it seem like it's a conspiracy?
I mean, if you're a
conspiracy?
Hollywood director, you're definitely going to be able to do that.
Yeah, and he's not. You know, he's not like an underground, you know, grassroots.
Which
guy.
I'm skeptical of those guys too, because they have ulterior motives where they're like, I'm just trying to get famous.
They're trying to get famous, right?
Right.
So,
I'm trying to just make money.
It's hard to know that Hollywood.
It's hard to say. And Hollywood to me has always felt like a CIA op in a lot of ways. There's a lot of propaganda that comes out of Hollywood, and so I think I always have to view some of these things through a lens of skepticism. But I think for people that are interested in what's going on and follow the UAP thing, I think it's something that they might be able to get some information out of. But I think it'll definitely continue to hit news headlines for a while. So if you're not really into the UAP and the UFO thing, this one might be worth checking out just to get some background, because I do know that there is quite a few stories that are true stories that most people aren't aware of you know, incidences like in Brazil and things like that. You know, it might open your eyes to saying, okay, the government continues to do stuff behind the scenes, and I just can't help but think when you factor in all the lies that we've been told, really since World War II, all the lies that we get told, I can't help but think, when do people just say we've had enough of the lies? I've just had enough of the lies. I just don't know, when do you get to that breaking point? You know, we had a revolution over tea. And representation over a 3% tax over tea. We literally, you know, fought the greatest empire the world had seen at the time in England over not having representation in government. And we're watching the government lie to us, our own government lie to us over and over again. It's like, when do we get fired up enough? I don't know. Do we get fired up enough?
I don't know.
All right, this is a weird transition. I was thinking about the rapid fire stuff the bus event. Moving on from aliens to the bus.
Yeah.
So some of you might know I bought a bus a couple years ago with the intention of doing Christmas light tours. Well, there's a lot of red tape and liability and insurance and challenges with doing Christmas light tours. That being said, I still have the bus because my boys love the bus, and I could never get rid of it at this point.
We took the bus on a road trip.
You did take the bus on a road trip.
Yep. We should post a picture of that. We got a picture with all the kids and everything. It was fun.
Yeah, it's fun.
It was a lot of fun.
It used to be a preschool bus, so it's the short bus, which is fitting because I used to get told that I took the short bus in school. That was what the mean kid said.
It tracks.
But the bus is now being reutilized as a Toys for Tots and fundraising bus, and St. George Fire Department has invited us out to Station 1. So brand new Station 1. So it's an opportunity for all of St. George, all of Washington County to come out, check out Station 1. It's their flagship fire station. Was just finished a couple months ago. But on December 5th, I believe starting at 6 o'clock, they're going to start taking toy donations for the county. And my bus will be there. We want to invite everybody in the community to come out.
I think there'll be multiple buses, correct? Like we're going to try and fill a bunch of buses, and is that how it goes?
I mean, I think we're going to stuff the bus. The bus is pretty big. If we stuff the whole bus, we've done really well.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff. Cool. But there's fire trucks. I mean, we can spill out of the bus. But the St. George Fire Department and I think the Washington County just Fire Association is kind of sponsoring this big event. There'll be a bunch of stuff going on. Last year they did it at Desert Color, but there's going to be a couple of Toys for Tots events all over the county. The bus will also be at over the course of December. So stay tuned for more and check in Toys for Tots. If you're looking for a great donation, great cause in Washington County, come check it out on December 5th. It's coming up fast. The holidays are here, everybody. And segueing into that, Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Starting at like 6 o'clock on December 5th. Come check it out at Station 1. A few events, holiday events I wanted to focus on and highlight for everybody. These are my favorite. So if you have other favorites, I would very much encourage you to jump into the comments and post what your favorite events are in Southern Utah for the holidays. But the St. George Christmas Village, I think they did it the first time maybe 2 years ago, but it's down at the Green Gate Village. It's going to go Thursday, Friday, and Saturdays starting November 28th, so the Saturday after Thanksgiving, through December 20th, from 5 to 10 in the evening. They'll have Santa there. There's lights. There's going to be little booths. There's going to be games and activities. But you can go see the Christmas lights that are all over downtown. You got Town Square right there. The Christmas tree lighting ceremony in downtown is actually very fun as well. They do a Santa race. They got hot chocolate. They sing caroling. They light all the lights up. I really enjoy that. When talking about good taxpayer money, I gotta say I like the Christmas lights. I like it. I'm okay with my tax money going towards.
Yeah,
Christmas
I know.
lights.
There's been some city council people that have questioned it a little bit because it's I can't remember the exact dollar amount. We could pull up the budget. I want to say it was like $20,000 or something like that. For the wages for the city guys and all the lights and all that stuff. And I'm like, this is the kind of stuff that brings communities together, and it's fun, and you show up and you have a good time and you celebrate.
This is going to dovetail into the paradoxes that we're going to be talking about later on with growth and how do we manage growth and being fiscally responsible and all these things. Is like, hey, at this local level, like we don't have to be Scrooge here. The government can do some things for the community that we all agree are great, but nobody's going to do individually as a private group. Now we could. But is that the likelihood of that happening and then consistently happening every year to have tradition and heritage? I think there's some argument there. Second great event that I love is the Tuacahn Christmas in the Canyon. That starts November 28th. I think that's another a great event. They got lights out there. They got a little train that goes along. I know they have Santa there. A couple of great Santas, but lots of stuff going on down there too. I love Tuacahn. I think it's beautiful with the Christmas lights and the canyon all lit up. They do a great job. And then the Dickens Festival. This is probably one of the coolest ones. This has been going on for 30 years probably. I think it goes all the way back to the 90s. But the Dickens Festival is running from December 3rd to December 6th. It's fast. It comes and goes really quick. It's at the Dixie Center. It goes from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. starting on December 3rd through the 6th. It's really cool. They got people all dressed up in old timey Dickens. What's the Christmas story? It's the Christmas story, right? But yeah, there's lots of shops. There's lots of booths there for holiday shopping. But then they have performances, so everybody kind of knows about the Dickens Festival already. But if you're new into town or you didn't know, the Dickens Festival is definitely worth going to. It is crowded. Probably don't bring your stroller if you got little kids. Maybe strap them on if you can. But it does get crowded because they make it all narrow, like the city of London and stuff like that. It's very fun. Yeah. Do you like the Dickens Festival?
I unfortunately have never been.
What?
I've never been.
Holy cow!
We're going this year though.
Are you?
It'll be fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that should be fun.
Yeah.
I would advise. This is just my own experience. Don't plan on taking pictures with Santa there. Don't. You'll be there. You'll be there all day because the line fills up fast and it doesn't go fast. So that's cool. It's a fun event. I can't believe you've never been.
I know.
Well, there you have it.
I know.
Another news story. I think this is the last one we're going to cover. And this is kind of a broader news story. It's funny, the mix of the rapid fire. I really should reorganize these better, folks. You can clearly see that I'm not a journalist.
We go from aliens to the Dickens Festival just like that. Nobody else can do that.
Nobody else can do that. To the balance of power struggles that are continuing across the nation. So the framers of the Constitution set this up. We have the three arms. We have the judiciary, we have the legislative, and we have the executive branches, right? The whole point is that these three branches balance each other out in their powers. Well, over the last 6 months, the balance of power struggle has been raging. Actually, it probably goes back multiple years. Like the lawfare with Trump, but the judiciary pushing back on the executive branch has really started to heat up. The judge blocks National Guard in D.C. and now Tennessee where previously they blocked it in Portland. So this is a string of judicial rulings that have pushed Trump to be able to not be able to use the National Guard to enforce law within the community to protect, under the name of protecting the ICE agents and the immigration reforms that he ran on as a president, which he was elected on. I think in a big way was a big reason why he was elected by a lot of the moderate side. I think he collected a lot of moderates from closing the border and the immigration that got out of control. This is my opinion. I think that was a big portion of what he got elected for, which he's pushing on. But he's been pushing the National Guard out to D.C., Tennessee, Portland, Chicago, multiple cities across the country, and the judge blocks this is the third time he's been blocked in sending National Guard out in Tennessee. And this follows an interesting ruling where the judiciary has upheld, now this is at the Supreme Court level, on a vote 5-4, which was interesting because I went to Google to find these stories on the Tren de Aragua.
Nothing there.
Google would not pull up the Supreme Court news article. I thought it was very crazy. Yeah. I'm like, this seems like you can't really, why would you sweep this one out? This is a Supreme Court ruling in favor of the president. This seems like it's a national news story. I couldn't get it. I couldn't get it on Google. But the Supreme Court did uphold on a really close vote, 5-4, in basically the directive that Trump has given to have the blanket deportation of anybody that's a member of this gang. So if you're not familiar, Tren de Aragua, it's a Venezuelan transnational criminal game originating in Aragua in Venezuela. And it started at the Torreon. Holy cow. In the prison. So it started in the prison in Venezuela back in 2013. And it's gotten a lot of national attention just recently because of what's been happening in Colorado. So as of August of this year, 30 members of the gang, TDA gang, we're going to call it TDA. The TDA gang were arrested in Colorado facing criminal indictments for firearm conspiracies, murder for hiring, and they're also known for trafficking weapons, drugs, additional human trafficking, murder, extortion, money laundering, and they have alleged ties with the president of Venezuela, Maduro, which dovetails into this greater conversation, which I've heard multiple talking heads, as they are, that we're on the verge of a full-blown war with Venezuela, right? We've put basically a fleet of naval ships into the Gulf of America, yes, the Gulf of America, and in the Pacific Ocean in order to stop the drug trafficking, the weapons trafficking, and the human trafficking that's going on from these speedboats that are zipping all around, bringing stuff into the United States. So there's been a bunch of news articles. I've heard multiple reports that, the president is issuing orders to blow up fishing boats and that they're doing this in a haphazard way. I don't know if any of those reports are actually accurate, that a fishing boat was blown up, or was it a fishing boat where all the fish were stuffed with fentanyl precursors or whatever it might be. But the point being is that the Supreme Court upheld specifically the ability to target this gang within the United States using the Alien
Enforcement Act?
Yeah, the Alien Enforcement Act. The Alien, thank you. I didn't put that in my notes, everybody. The Alien Enforcement Act, to be able to get rid of these guys. Now, there are a couple of conditions that if any of the members are citizens or are here on temporary visas or whatever, that they can't be immediately deported. But anybody that's not can be immediately deported without any due process whatsoever. But the Supreme Court upheld his ability to do that. So you have, on the one side, you have the judicial system pushing back on Trump, and on the other side, it is supporting him in some of his executive orders. And this comes all the way back, in a circle with what we've talked about for the last couple of weeks, is the Utah Judge Gibson, overruling the state legislature and the Utah Constitution and their authority to draw the congressional map. So it specifically states in the Utah Constitution that the legislature is the one that approves the congressional maps for the U.S. House of Representatives, right? So the state legislature is required to authorize the map. Well, the Utah judge in this lawsuit rejected the map that was approved by the state legislature, and outside of her legal authority, in my opinion, I'm not a lawyer, but out of the opinion of lots of other attorneys throughout the state, say that this does it is a legal overreach on her ability to adopt this map. She approved a map that wasn't adopted by the state legislature. Almost immediately after that, though, the lieutenant governor, Deidre Henderson, said that they were going to move forward with that map that the judge put forward as the current map. And that map, like I covered on the past episodes, would essentially give the Democrats a very possible ability to get a single seat in the U.S. House of Representatives in the state of Utah, which historically it has never had. And because that map puts Salt Lake City as one single district, where the other map divides Salt Lake City into basically 4 portions. So the interesting piece to this is that you have a judge overruling a legislature, judges overruling the executive branch. There's this balance here. How does the legislature push back against the judicial branch? Well, that's where articles of impeachment can come into play. But as of today, there's no appeal that's been filed by the state legislature, which is telling of something. And there's been no direct articles of impeachment. Oh my gosh. No official articles of impeachment have been filed yet to the judge. Probably because the Utah Constitution, the ability to get a judge impeached takes, I think, 60%. It's like 66%. It's 2/3 vote of impeachment, both in the House and in the Senate. And yes, the Republicans have that amount of seats, both in the House and the Senate, to be able to do that. It would cause a rift within the Republican Party for those that don't agree that impeachment is the proper use of challenging this judge's ruling. It'll be interesting to see. I'm sure it's going to be a hot topic for the rest of the year, but they're really coming into a timeline because the map needs to be finished so that people can start campaigning, because we're going to go into an election cycle in 2026, and that map is ultimately going to be used if something doesn't happen. So they better get on an appeal. But I do know from behind the scenes, being a delegate myself for the Republican Party. Yes, I'm the chair of the Republican Party for Ivan 7. From what I know within the Republican Party, it sounds like there's going to be a push to repeal Proposition 4. I'm not going to get into the whole background on Prop 4 and how this whole gubernatorial map, gerrymandering topic was the timeline of that. I'm not going to get back to it. You can go back to the last episode, do some research on it yourself. However, Prop 4 is the single, tinderbox. That's where it started. Is a ballot initiative. Supreme Court said ballot initiatives can't be modified by the legislature, and now here we're going. So they're probably going to push to repeal Proposition 4. So stay tuned for that. I do have some people that have wanted to jump on the podcast and talk about this in depth. So I'm sure we'll have some a healthy debate as to whether we should do this or not, because I have some mixed feelings about this myself. However, there's going to be more to come on this. But the power struggle is going to continue, I think, as we keep going forward. All right. Indy, you got anything to say on that? There's not much to say.
Yeah, not much to say, aside from, if it just makes you wonder, makes you think what talks, in the power struggle in Utah happened beforehand to try to get the Democrats another seat, a single seat, because, the likelihood of that happening is pretty high. It just goes back to, what do people in power know that we don't know that they are, ruling over us with?
Yeah. It's a funny battle. It's a funny battle.
Anyway.
as we transition to the top story, talking about growth, I want to encourage everybody to jump in on YouTube Live. We really wanted to bring this format so that we can bring the community in. We're doing it at lunch on a Friday. Hopefully that we can get some people that are on their lunch break. But if you're listening to this, we'd love for you to join us on YouTube Live and jump in the comments so that we can have a segment where we read comments, so we can talk to the community and really get this conversation kind of flowing. So, if you're listening to it on a podcast app later on, it'll hit the podcast apps by Sunday. So if you're listening to this audio version, we went live Friday. We're live right now. Right now we have like 7,000 people watching us live on YouTube with no comments. Just kidding. We have one person watching us on YouTube. So we'll get there. But I would love to be able to jump in the comments and discuss what you guys are discussing. But back to our top story. Okay. Southern Utah growth. Now, there's 3 pillars, and we're going to frame this out over the next few weeks and months as we go, because I'm going to have some experts talking about each one of these elements of growth. So I've created this myself. I'd love feedback and how to expand on this, or at least how to understand this a little bit better. But there's 3 pillars when it comes to growth, right? And this is for any city, any community across the country. Right? There's the economic pillar, the financial pillar, right? There's the environmental pillar, which doesn't mean like climate change. It means the environmental elements. What are our resources? We got water, we got land, we have quality, like the quality of life of how we live. Traffic could come into play on this, right? What's the environment that we live in? What are the things we see, the scar on the hill, right? What's the environment like within the community? And then there's the social dynamics within the community. So the 3 pillars, we have the economic pillar, which tends to get the most focus. We have the environmental side that gets a lot of the focus, but then driving both of these pillars is this social pillar that bubbles up. These are the feelings that we have about the things that are changing within our community. But these are the 3 pillars that we kind of look at when we're thinking about growth. It's not just rooftops. It's not just people and crowds. It's all of these elements. And we're going to dive deeper into these 3 pillars as we go forward. But I first want to present the 4 paradoxes, the 4 growth paradoxes. So this is what I came up with. So the first one being housing. We have a housing paradox. We have a need and a driving social pressure for more affordable housing. The solutions to that are one of 2 things. Supply and demand drive the price of housing. Well, supply, you can increase supply, or you can control demand. Most policies focus on increasing an individual's ability to buy a house by subsidizing their ability to make it more affordable, right? So you think of the grant programs sent down by the state of Utah. You have Utah housing rules. You have Section 8 housing for rental. This is increasing demand. So it doesn't change supply, but increases demand. What does that do to prices? It drives prices up. It doesn't alleviate the financial affordability of it. It actually does the opposite over the long tail, is it increases prices, right? So we have this housing paradox. We need supply, but we also have a social dynamic of saying, well, we don't want more people here because it's too crowded. We don't want it in our backyard, right? Back to the 500 unit apartment complex. So we have this housing paradox. Then we have our resource paradox, right? We have limited land. Only 11% of the land mass in Washington County is privately owned and available for development. 11%. So when you have scarce resources in water and land, when you have low supply and high demand, what does that do for prices? It drives prices up. How do we control those resources? How do we open up more land, but not sprawl to where it puts additional strain on public safety and transportation and additional water scarcity issues? So we have this resource paradox. Like, how do we solve the resource paradox? Then we have jobs and wages. This falls into the social and also economic portion of the pillar, right? Where we have really low unemployment countywide. If you talk to most businesses, they have a hard time finding workers, and not necessarily. They probably get people in that want jobs, but quality workers, right, is what I hear most of, like getting good quality services. But for the most part, we don't have a very large labor pool, right? When we don't have a very large labor pool and unemployment is basically low, wages don't necessarily rise at the same pace. And the top economic sectors within Washington County are healthcare, their retail, and their construction. So the health services, all these main three, retail, health, construction, those top economic sectors, they don't pay the highest wages, which, going back to our beginning with Tech Ridge, that does increase wages. But especially construction, these jobs and these wages actually are fed based off of an increased population, right? These segments of our economy grow because of the growth in humans that come here. And they're reliant on more people coming here. Construction will grow, people will make more money if more people come here, which causes housing to be more unaffordable and puts more strain on our resources. So we could see how jobs and wages impact resources. So looking at this little spiral that I got going here, we have housing causes issues with jobs and wages and jobs, the funnel into the heritage of our community. So most people, I think if you look around town or have moved here and, I think prior to probably 2010, right, or in the last 15 years, they're not necessarily as concerned with preserving the heritage because what they have now isn't that much different than what was there when we got here. But I moved here in 2015, and it had a very small town feel to it. But as opposed to those that moved here in the early 2000s, it's a significant jump, right? The small town feel is rapidly deteriorating, and the idea of retaining heritage is eroded away as we grow. And so holding on to these elements, they all funnel into each other. So over the next few weeks, we're going to dive into each one of these paradoxes, understand the pillars of the economic growth that are happening in our county, and then allowing us to decide what path are we going to go on? Excuse me. What are we going to do to solve some of these problems? But when we solve one problem, sometimes it causes another problem. So we got to come together and really look at how do we innovate our way around some of these issues that we have, and think thoughtfully about how we move forward. And this is going to take a collective effort of city councils, county members, the state legislature, to allow us to do things that might not be popular across the rest of the state, but it fits into what we want here in Southern Utah. So that's kind of my teaser prep conversation, what I want people to be thinking about as we move through the next few weeks and the next few months of talking about growth, because we're going to continue to talk about growth. And each one of these things I think are really hot topics for all of us. But yeah, what do you think? What do you think? Because Jeff, you were at the presentation. How do you think it went? Do you feel like there's an interesting dynamic here that people are going to get some value out of?
Oh yeah, no question. I mean, I thought you did the presentation, so it was fantastic.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
So,
you could lie to me.
No, not at all. But I think I don't want to get too deep because we really want to get into the weeds on these topics. St. George is such a weird's not the right word. It's such an interesting place because we're 4 hours from the Wasatch Front. We're right on the border of a couple of other states. We have significantly different issues than even just like Iron County, but significantly different issues than the Wasatch Front. But all of the state legislation comes from the Wasatch Front, right? So we're lumped into this economic hub of the Wasatch Front when a lot of the legislation, economic thoughts,
what they value is what they want for us to value down here, because we're such a huge economic driver for the state, because we really are. If you look across, this is one thing about the economic piece and pillar to us in Washington County, and a lot of people don't know this, and I was actually really shocked to look at the data, but over the last since 2019, so this is going back since 2019, the national average of county gross domestic product, real GDP, so it's adjusted for inflation. The national average for counties is at 8% growth in GDP. Washington County had a 21% growth over that same time frame. 21%.
More than double.
More than double the county. Higher than the state of Utah, which was 18% growth, which is massive.
Crazy.
It was the fastest, economic growth engine in the entire country. But Washington County specifically was 21%. There is only about 6 counties in the entire country of our similar size. That's over 500 counties within the country of our similar size that had a higher than 21% growth. And all of them are tied specifically to an industry that's really volatile, like mining, right? So they have this one piece of industry that's come in and dominated. We don't have any single industry that's driven that GDP up. The thing that's driven our GDP up is the mix of leisure, hospitality, construction, and our insane growth with the amount of jobs and businesses that have cropped up here over the last six years in a bunch of different segments. We probably have the healthiest GDP growth out of all of those counties across the country. And so when you think of like the state of Utah, the values up north and what they value in their legislation and promoting growth there, it's not the same as what we want to value down here.
Right.
And so it's a difficult dynamic, kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah, and maybe Logan is a similar dynamic, but Logan isn't near as Cache County's not near as big as Washington County, and and it's growing quite a bit too. But my point in saying that is most of the leadership is in the Wasatch Front. We're kind of on an island down here, right? So there's a lot of things that we're going to have to figure out on our own and probably push this at the state level on our own. So with that being said, my thought always goes back to we're at this. I feel like we're at this window of time, whatever that time frame might look like. Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? I feel like we're in the middle of this opening or closing of this window in how St. George and the county in general is going to look in 20 to 25 years, right? I mean, 20 years ago, like you said, there was nothing in Ivins, right? There was nothing. There was a couple stoplights down here in 2000, right? I don't know how many. Someone can fact check me on that. But, we had a conversation with Sherry Staley. She's been here forever. Her family's been here forever. And
Staley Family Farm. Shout out.
But then, COVID was a driver of a lot of folks moving here, a lot of folks with a lot of money. We've talked to plenty of people who made all of their money in, like a Houston or a Seattle or, a big
Maryland.
city. Maryland. Yeah, could take your pick, right? Somebody moved here from there. And now they're, maybe they sold their home for $1 million or $2 million and they bought a home here and they've got a bunch of money and they're kind of retired or semi-retired. That's a huge dynamic, right? That doesn't necessarily really exist in a Salt Lake City. Not that Salt Lake City doesn't have a heritage, because obviously it does. Provo, Utah, obviously Provo's got a heritage, but there isn't this stark dynamic of people that moved into Provo, and then also this stark dynamic of people that have been there since, the 40s and 50s or 60s that have seen, Provo grow, right? It just doesn't work. So, but in 30 years, St. George is probably going to look something like Provo or Orem or, at least maybe from a population standpoint. So what are we doing now to make it so that in 30 years we've got a great infrastructure, we have affordable housing, we have a good job market, we've got nice places to go, as far as when we build something, it's going to stay there. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Once we build it, that's what we get.
Right. Yeah. Once it's there, right? How are we going to redevelop, right? What's the boulevard going to look like? What's St. George Boulevard going to look like in 20 years or 30 years? So, if we go so far one way where it's just this urban sprawl and, we've got, Little Valley times 20, it just isn't going to work. Right. But on the flip side, if we've got a whole bunch of skyrise buildings and you can't see the top of Zion, or you can't see the D, or you can't see the Red Hill, that's a huge problem too.
Yeah.
So what's that going to look like in 20 years? And these four paradoxes all play into it. And I think it'd be super cool if we had a whole bunch of people that maybe had a super strong opinion. Right? Did you move here in the last 5 years? What are your thoughts on what it's going to look like? Have you been here for 30 years? Is it sad to see there's no more farm? There's right, like Long Valley is going to be homes eventually, right? Little Valley was a bunch of farms I mean, you look at a before and after from 2010
Yeah, it's crazy.
in Little Valley until now.
And the fields.
It's wild.
It's wild.
There was nothing out there in 2010. That's 15 years ago. So
yeah.
That's
we
where my
added
mind
75,000 people in 15 years. We added 75,000 people in 15 years to Washington County.
Wild.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
It's wild.
It's not something that can be ignored. And so my point.
I think that's the point.
I think my point
Can't
in
be
this whole
ignored.
thing is that there is two things can be true at the same time. Growth is going to continue, and do we continue to do the same thing we did at this point? The rapid growth, that's 75,000. Did we do it the right way? Can we look back and be like, yeah, we probably made a couple of mistakes along the way? Admit to some of those mistakes that we did do, which politicians hate to do, but I think even communities don't like admitting when they've made mistakes. And there's a reaction to, well, we made this mistake, but now we can't re-look at it. What looked like a mistake at one point, can we re-look at that and say, okay, we need to do this? Or, do we keep doing the same thing over and over again? But I think the main driver, and I think the main focus of this entirety is we need to have an innovative approach to how we keep moving forward, because we do get to shape the next 30 years. And the only way it's helpful, and this goes back to kind of the main reason why I started this podcast, is not to become a national, talking head on politics. I never meant for that to happen. Like listening to podcasts, and you hear all these people, they talk about national stuff and statewide stuff. The point is, I want an engaged public within Washington County. I want an engaged public that understand these dynamics. There's education that goes along with how do we move forward. And the more we can educate, the more we can engage, the better outcomes that we can draw, because the collective group, the market, never lies. The market never lies. And so if we have an engaged group rather than a select group contributing into that, the better we're going to get. So that going back to my appeal, join us on Fridays, lunchtime. We're going to be here on YouTube Live. Jump in the comments. I want to bring up these conversations. We're going to have Zach Renstrom's already talked about coming in. We're going to try to get Steve Waldrop, who's the state housing authority guy, directed by Governor Cox. We want to get him in. We want to get Senator Mike Lee in to talk about national stuff. We want to get state politicians in to talk about what we're moving forward. We need to get the governor back in to talk about water.
We got a newly elected mayor of St. George. I think it would be important to get his thoughts.
Because I know he historically probably hasn't been. He's going to be labeled as pro-growth guy, but what I know of Jimmy is he's interested in responsible growth, right? And I think if we look back, we didn't necessarily have responsible growth. We had an incentive that was grow, baby, grow at all costs, and we're at the stage where, all right, we don't need to slow necessarily the growth of housing. In my opinion, we don't need to slow the growth of the housing piece, because people still need to live. But how do we grow smart in a way that isn't going to impact the resources that we have, the jobs that we have, and holding on to the heritage? I think this is the last thing I'll say about this. Look at Nashville, Tennessee. What is Nashville, Tennessee known for?
Country music.
Music, right? They have a heritage that transcends whatever it is. What's Park City known for? Skiing, right?
Snowboarding.
But they had a heritage probably that was beyond that at one point, and now it's evolved to that. Has Nashville been able to hold on to their heritage? What is the heritage that St. George has that we're not going to let go and eliminate? The beauty in the community, the aesthetic of our community, the open trails, the open space, the outdoor experience. That's something we have to hold on to. But
the gritty survival nature of how the town grew.
Yeah, the innovative
pioneer heritage.
The pioneer heritage, right? You go from the agricultural. They took dirt that didn't want to grow anything and created something out of it.
They brought water where there was no water.
They brought water where there's no water. They utilize the resources really smartly. We protect our natural species, whether the turtle is natural or not. I don't know, dude. I don't know. It's so up in the air. I don't know what's true. But protecting the vistas. But how do we still have housing? How do we protect I mean, we have 11% of the resource, 11% of the land that we get to utilize. Do we continue to just expand that? Do we adopt, do we let the Bureau of Land Management give us land and let us steward that and open up some of these resources? The point being, we're going to discuss all this stuff. Jump into YouTube, Fridays at lunch. We want to hear your thoughts. We want you to be engaged. We're going to keep doing this. Yeah, thanks for being on, guys. Anything else? Any final words? Shout out to Caleb, our producer. Caleb, I never give you the recognition you need, man, or you deserve.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, my friend. You do an amazing job. And
he's got a great beard.
He's got a great beard. Enjoy your holidays, guys. It's coming up. Family is the most important thing. Get back into the community. We'll see you out there, everybody. Enjoy your weekend.